Hello, I'm Odin, and I make a lot of props from movies and TV shows. How about one right from the comic books? It's Xavier's Cerebro helmet from the new X-Men comic, House of X. So I want to do the new walk-around Cerebro because I think it looks really cool and it's a great idea. And I noticed that there's some differences with how the design is between House of X and Power of 10. I think I'm saying that right. So I'm going to go with this design because I actually like this one a little bit more. Plus, this is the one that I actually saw at the con. When I saw Kyle's version, I really liked it, but I hadn't read the new X-Men comics. He had explained it to me, and I looked up the pictures online. And what's nice is, even here, there's differences. It's not 100% consistent. There's major pieces that's throughout, but when it comes to some of the fine details, we get to make that up. Cerebro is a bigger helmet, so I'm going to make the helmet in two parts, or two layers. First, I patterned my head for a very basic, tight-fitting helmet. Aluminum foil will fit the shape of my head cast, and a layer of duct tape will hold that shape when I remove it. I draw on a pattern that I want to make. The lines are going to be the seams. I add darts to some of the curves, and I make alignment marks across all of the seams. Then I cut up my pattern and make sure that it'll lay flat, so that I can cut it out of foam. I like to transfer the duct tape pattern to poster board or cardstock. It's a lot easier to work with. Just make sure to copy all the alignment marks, front and back, and if it's the left side or the right. When you have more pieces than just these two, it's easy to forget which one is which. Pattern notches are the best for the alignment marks. I trace the pattern pieces twice, flipping it over so I can get both sides, and copying all the marks, of course. I cut the foam pieces out, including the darts. And I use a heat gun and a planishing stake to make curves to the foam. It's much easier to glue the foam together if it's curved before you start. I use contact cement to glue all my foam together. You start by applying it to both halves of what you're going to stick together. Then you'll let it nearly dry, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then the parts will just stick together. Follow your registration marks and keep them lined up. If a seam slips, your piece is going to be warped. And this completes the inner helmet. Honestly, I need to save this pattern and use it again. Because the full Cerebro helmet is bigger than my head, the next layer pattern I made from a basketball. This is made in exactly the same way. Draw out half the helmet, cut out the pieces, copy them to cardboard, and then onto some foam. The inner helmet was made from 6mm foam, and the outer shell is made from 10mm foam. It's a little thicker than it probably needs to be, but I don't want it to dent or flex.
All right, so I can glue it onto the front. Actually, that's about it. I can only glue it onto the front at the moment.
For the helmet to sit where I want, I cut some 30mm strips of foam and glue them to the back edge. There's also a wedge I glue along the top seam for more support. I glue the helmets together. I also add a couple more supports between them near my ears.
I need to put these pieces on while that's drying.
That decorative piece on the top of the head is thinner foam. It's 6mm. The rest is 10mm thick. I cut arcs of 3mm self-adhesive foam, which will nearly fill in the indentation, and they'll cover up that center seam. I marked the center of each of the arcs so I can put them on correctly, and I did use contact cement on the helmet side only to help the self-adhesive foam stick. Fill in the rest of the back of the head. I use a clear 2-inch wide ruler to trace the placement of the X for the visor. My actual pattern altered a little bit from this, but it was a really good start to figuring out how to keep the X shape and to keep it covering my eyes. As for the rest of the helmet,
so this is all techno stuff. I need to put a box, which will help hide this line. That's good. And a box that'll help hide this line. That's good. Yeah.
I will make the boxes or vents that are on the helmet solid from 3 layers of floor foam mat. The lower set is a little larger than the top. After I glue the layers together, I round off the top corners so I can wrap them with 4mm foam. There's an extra little 4th layer on the upper boxes because I want to hang them off the back of the ridge of the helmet. Then I glue the vents on each end of all 4 of the vent box things. I glue the bottom boxes on right along the seam line. They hang a little lower than the edge of the helmet, but that's okay because I need to add another piece down there anyway. The upper box I make to sit off the back ridge of the helmet. I also added a bottom trim to complete the vent look. In between gluing these boxes on, I figured out how to cut and attach the panels for the back of the neck. I repurposed the 10mm cutouts from the top of the head as the panels that go below the side boxes, gluing them under the boxes but over the back of the neck. I put a little fin on the back of the helmet and then glue a 2mm strip over it to hide more seams. One consistent thing in the comic art is 2 panels that are on the back of the head, so I make sure to place those. The rest of the details I make up as I add them. Some are squares with holes cut in them. The smaller hole cutouts I save to glue into the larger holes. Other panels have half-round dowels that I had left over, and I add more of those hole cutouts to the bottom half of the half-rounds. I continue to add more little details, filling in the back of the helmet. I cut out a dozen or so self-adhesive dots as rivets, and I added a few more raised panels in the back ridge. I used my smallest foam hole punch to cut ports for the hoses so they can fit on the face and on the back of the head. I glue more raised circles around these holes to add more details. I use a fine wood burning tip and a metal ruler to burn in panel lines. This is pretty much all over the helmet. It's on the back and a little bit on the face, mostly between the X-visor sides. Sometimes I just poke into it as well to add little tiny holes. It's really fun to add all the technical greeble details, but I try to stop because I don't want to add too much. This helmet was probably made by Forge and not the Borg. 2 coats of plastic dip and 3 coats of gloss clear sealer, and I can start painting this thing silver. I looked at a couple of silver paints. I even bought some good silver ink, but the spray painted metallic silver that I get from a Krylon can is just as good and easier to apply. It's not the super chrome stuff, just metallic silver. I thinned some black acrylic paint with rubbing alcohol and painted in the low areas on all of the vents. I thin the paint a little more and draw in the panel lines. This is a lot like working on an oversized Gundam kit. I fill in the panel lines in the back as well. It's easy to wipe off any extra that goes outside of the lines. I also trace the panel lines that are on the cheek vents. I tape off the top decoration and use my new airbrush to coat it in a transparent blue. I was hoping for a more metallic to show through the blue, but I'm not upset. I masked off the rest of the helmet and sprayed a few coats of gloss sealer over the light blue. The comic art has specular highlights here, like it's a glossy material. I also used the airbrush to add shadows around a lot of the details on the back of the head. So I'm not upset with the airbrush. I haven't really used one in a decade, so I'm a little rusty. This is gonna work for me. I've got the shadowing that I wanted without just washing it down with black like I typically do. So it's still a bright silver, but it's got a little something going on. It's not just pure spray paint. The blue worked out really nice. So the one big detail that I'm really worried about getting done now is the visor. It's got a specific X visor that's gonna need to be able to see through if you wanna walk around safely. So I'm gonna need to cut one of these out of acrylic. I've got some for that. Heat form it so it actually fits the roundness of the helmet itself, and then put a piece of mirrored window tint onto the back of it, which is something I haven't done before. So if this works out, I'll be really happy. Let's give it a shot. I have an 1/8" thick piece of transparent blue acrylic, but before I can cut it, I need to drill out where the inside corners are, because if I don't, the acrylic is very likely to crack and split at those inside corners. I still need to be really careful cutting the plastic out. I want the edges clean, not big nicks, and if I twist the plastic against the blade too much, that could crack it too. I sand down the edges to remove the saw marks, more for looks than anything else. Now I can peel off the protective film. I use a heat gun and a metal bowl to form the curve of the visor. Now it never works on the first try, but as long as I don't burn the plastic, I can heat it and form it again. And the less you do, the better, but more than one try is fine. All right. I used a small butane torch to do a flame polish around the edges of all of the visor. I picked up a small piece of mirror window film. If you've installed this properly, it'll actually make a two-way mirror. but window film will not conform to a compound curve. I thought maybe I could get away with it anyway. It's just an X, not a full 70s motorcycle visor.
It's just peeling back up again. It's just not staying down. This is going to end up being pretty wrinkly. There isn't much I can do to get around it because I can't squeegee nothing out of it. This is what I was afraid of.
I tried some smaller pieces, maybe a patchwork approach. The film had wrinkles and cuts in it before.
Keeps peeling up at the edge. Not too bad, but just enough.
I consider applying the film, then putting it into a thick plastic bag and using a vacuum pump to remove all the air. I would get constant pressure against all the points of the film that way. But more than likely, I would just tear the film or end up cracking the plastic. So after 2 hours of trying 3 or 4 different ways, it's time to give up on the window film. I tape off the front and the tiny sides of the visor. I'm just going to spray paint it now. I did a first layer, which you can barely see here. That was the blue I used on the Captain America shield. And then I came back and backed it with silver. That way I can put double stick tape in the 4 corners and actually stick it to the helmet once everything's dry. Looks like that'll be fine. I'm gonna give the visor a little bit longer to dry, but I need to do the 4 hoses. So he's got 2 hoses that run from the face back around to the backside. There's 2 on each side. I figured out the length that I needed when I made the visor pattern, and 14 inches is gonna be fine. I'm using a 1/4 inch vinyl tubing for the shape, but covering it with some shiny black mesh tube. I work enough of this Halloween mesh onto the 1/4 inch tube so I can end up cutting out 4 sections. And I wrap some black masking tape around the ends before I cut them to keep the mesh tube from fraying. I can fit the fully taped end of the tubes into the holes that I made in the helmet. Something I could try is I could add LED lights at the ends of each of these ports to help the tubes glow, but it'll only glow at the ends. And that's just not something I'm going to try tonight. I put 5 pieces of that double stick white foam tape on the visor, and I remove the blue masking tape. And then I carefully stick it to the helmet. Now I know the tape is stronger than the spray paint on the visor, so there is a risk here of the tape pulling the paint off sometime in the future. Okay, the spray paint visor is kind of working. I mean, it's not, don't get me wrong. It's not like, oh, I got perfect vision. This is like wearing sunglasses. No, it's like looking in a foggy bathroom mirror. I can see the lights. I can see bright things that are here in the background behind the camera. I can see my hand, kind of. It's really foggy like a bathroom mirror. But what I can see plainly is the table in front of me. I can very easily see my hands right now on the table, even without looking down. Looking down makes it easier. So I could potentially be able to walk around and miss things like steps and curbs because I can see where my feet are gonna go by looking down. Now, I can't see anything up above, so if I was to wear this at a con on the con floor, I would definitely need a handle or somebody that could help watch out for me because I'll bump into something. But this visor, the spray paint, kind of works. Now, there's going to be better ways to do it because obviously window tint won't work. It's a compound curve. Window tint will never fit to a compound curve. It doesn't do that. But there are guys that make halo visors and they paint them on the inside with something that gives them a really good metallic gold and other colors. Really should have talked to them about what it is they do. So maybe at some point I can improve this visor, but for now I've got a visor I can see. I've got a Cerebro helmet, and that's exciting because what's funny is I got enough vision I can actually just turn the cameras off. Well, that's interesting. Oh, where's the button? There it is. Alrighty. And I want to thank Bob Birch, Stooge Slap, and all of my Patreon supporters. You guys really do make this show possible. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you build any of these projects, you can send me a picture.